So for the past quarter century or so, while you guys were doing useful and productive things with your lives, I have spent a career as an explorer. I led 17 expeditions, including a record-setting 15,536-mile ride from Prudhoe Bay, Alaska to Tierra del Fuego, Argentina, which may sound impressive, but any of you who've looked at a globe know it's all downhill. So what I'm going to talk about today are lessons from the world's longest lived people and how we can put those lessons to work in our lives. Since about 2002, I've been working with National Geographic to identify the parts of the world where people live measurably longer. They either have many more centenarians than we do, sometimes 10 times as many, life expectancy of up to 11 years longer than we do, and about a fifth the rate of chronic disease. Something called the Danish Twin Study established that only about 20% of how long the average person lives is dictated by genes. The other 80% is lifestyle. So if we could identify these demographically confirmed areas and actually go there using techniques of demography, of anthropology, of medical research, and find out what are the common correlations, no matter if you're in Asia, Latin America, Europe, or even the United States. Along the way, we met about 250 centenarians. These are all people over 105. Ed Rawlings, still a working cowboy, swims every morning, skis on the weekend. And Marge Jatan, 105, wakes up every morning, eats her oatmeal, followed by what she calls a prune juice shooter. Imagine that for a second and then get it out of your head. But then she gets into her 1994 root beer-colored Cadillac Seville, where she barrels down the San Bernardino Freeway, still volunteering for 7 different organizations. And though I've led 17 pretty hardcore expeditions for National Geographic, I can honestly tell you I've never been on an adventure more harrowing than riding shotgun with Marge Jatan. So, no matter where you go in the world, you see the same 9 things happening over and over and over among these populations that are living longer. First and foremost, I put them into 4 categories. The first category I talk about is physical activity. And you never see these long-lived people exercising, and at least in the way we think of exercising. And in fact, as a public health initiative in this country, exercise has been an unmitigated failure. The average American burns fewer than 100 calories a day engaged in exercise. When you look at the environments of people who live a long time, they are constantly nudged into physical activity because their homes are deconvenienced. They live in communities where every time they go to church, every time they go to a friend's house, every time they go to the store, it occasions a walk. They have gardens. The second category, also a category you don't hear much about when it comes to longevity because there's nothing to market you, is downshifting. These people have the same stress as we do, but what they have are rituals, prayer, meditation. Sardinians just do happy hour, but to reverse the chronic inflammation that accumulates after a day of stress. Every major age-related disease, from Alzheimer's to heart disease, has a common root in chronic inflammation. They have a strong sense of purpose, which is worth about 7 extra years of life expectancy. Do you know the 2 years of your life where you're most likely to die? The first one is the year you're born, because of infant mortality, you can't do much about that. And the second one is the year you retire. 3-fold spike in mortality in the year you retire. Is that because of the wild retirement party? No, I assert it's because you all of a sudden lose that work-given sense of purpose, and then what do you do next? When it comes to what they consume, there's probably no blue zone diet, but based on what I saw last night here at the party, you guys are going to like the first one. They all pretty much drink. One culture, the Icarians, they drink about 4 glasses of wine a day, but on average, it's 1 to 2 glasses a day. And no, you can't save up all week long and have 14 on the weekend. Mostly a plant-based diet, very Dean Ornish-esque, actually. They do eat some meat, but meat only about 5 times per month, a little bit of fish, mostly beans and nuts. turns out that people who eat nuts at least 4 times a week, 2 ounces at a time, live about 2 to 3 years longer than people who don't eat nuts. And then finally, the big insight that these people give us is little rituals to keep from overeating. Pre-plating your food before you bring it to the table. Eating a huge breakfast. People eat a huge breakfast actually consume fewer calories than those people who start their day with a breakfast bar. Also, saying some sort of a prayer. The Okinawans intone hara hachi bu between every meal to state some appreciation of their food, to actually slow down, and to remind themselves to quit eating when their stomach is 80% full. And then finally, the foundation on which all of this rests is how they connect. They keep their aging parents nearby, they invest in their spouse, they invest in their kids. It turns out if you put your aging parent in a retirement home, their life expectancy drops almost immediately about 4 years. People who are married actually live longer than people who are divorced or single. They belong to a faith-based community. It doesn't matter if you're Christian, Buddhist, Muslim, but people who belong to a faith and show up go at least 4 times a month, live 4 to 14 years longer than people who don't. And those people getting the extra 14 years of life expectancy, inner city minorities. And then finally, the big insight that these people in blue zones, people who live the longest, teach us is the idea of surrounding yourself with the right people. If you are alone in this world, if you meet the technical definition of isolation, which means you don't have at least 2 good friends you can count on a bad day, your life expectancy is about 8 years lower than it is if you're surrounded by a strong social network. Your friends' health habits are contagious. If your 3 best friends are obese, there's a 150% better chance that you'll be overweight. If your friends smoke or do drugs, it's more likely that you'll smoke and do drugs. Even if your friends are unhappy and lonely, those traits are also contagious. So thinking about who you surround yourself with. So life expectancy in America right now is about 79. But the capacity of the human machine, the average lifespan of the American population is between 90 and 92. So somewhere we're leaving about 12 years on the table, and they'd be likely to be good years. As you know, you can tell people all day long the things you can do to engineer those years back into your lives. But how do you get populations to do it? Right now, we spend about $110 billion a year on diets, supplements, and exercise programs. And these are actually good ideas. It's a good idea to get people to eat right. There's a minority of people who do need supplements. Exercise programs are good. But the problem is, they don't last. If I got everybody in this room on a blue zone diet right now, out of every 100 that started, within about 3 months, I would lose 10 of you. Within about 7 months, I'd lose 90 of you. And within about 3 years, I'd lose almost all of you. You see the same recidivism curve with gym memberships and exercise programs. You start with 100, within 3 years you lose about 90%, and the same thing with supplements. Even if I'd come back with a pill that promised to reverse your aging, Americans wouldn't take it long enough to make a difference. So if diets, exercise programs, and supplements don't work, what does? A few years back, National Geographic gave me a second grant to look at parts of the world that were unhealthy and became healthier. And I embedded myself with those programs, and I learned 2 things. There's one in Finland, and there's another one in France. I learned 2 things. It has never worked in America. Despite the tens of millions of dollars we've spent on community health programs, they never last. You sort of get the Hawthorne effect, the health equivalence version of the Hawthorne effect. As soon as, while experts are paying attention, people make the changes, but when experts leave, people go right back to their baseline. So based on what was working in Finland and in northern France, we created an American version of this. I got about $1 million from AARP, hired a group of experts, and we started to look about the environment that we Americans live in. Most of us live within about a 20-mile radius of our home or our place of work. So our job was to optimize that. We put together a gold standard of policies that nudge people into smoking less, nudge people into eating more, places where, or policies that limit the number of fast food restaurants that can go up in the middle of a town. We came up with a plan to optimize the built environment. If you can just make it easy to walk and to bike and to clean up parts, you can raise the activity level of an entire community by as much as 30%. No gym memberships, no yoga classes, no ab masters. Engineering social networks so you get people who are ready to change their habits, introducing them to each other. There are over 100 building designs that you can put to work in schools, restaurants, and grocery stores that'll nudge people into eating less and moving more. And then there's an element of purpose. But essentially the idea behind this design is taking what Daniel Arelli was talking about yesterday, nudges and defaults, and putting them to work in an entire community. Now here comes the secret sauce. Instead of arriving at a city and saying, I have the answer for you, we made 5 cities audition. One city, Albert Lea, Minnesota, the mayor, the city manager, the CEOs, the head of the Chamber of Commerce, the superintendent of school all signed a pledge for us. They agreed to come in and let us work with their city managers to make sure that there was at least one vector from every neighborhood to downtown. That involved only connecting about 2.5 miles of sidewalks. They were going to widen Main Street. We convinced them to take that money and actually put a trail around a lake right downtown. So without having to give people incentives or market to them, there's an easy way to recreate right downtown, easy thing to do. We put in about 4 public gardens. There's 100 or so different slots. We worked with 50% of the restaurants to set up nudges and defaults there. If you go to a restaurant, you sit down for a meal, statistically speaking, you're going to consume about 200 more calories than you would if you ate at home. There are little things that make a big difference in restaurants. If you automatically get bread when you sit down, you're going to consume about 75 more calories than if you have to ask for it. The big opportunity lies in the menus. Changing the adjective. Do you know what adjective most assures that people won't order an entree? The healthy choice. Nobody wants the damn healthy choice. They want something good when they go out. So you use adjectives like crispy or Italian primavera, and then people start ordering the salad. We tag foods in grocery stores. Created a blue zone aisle, so only healthy choices were available when you went through the checkout line. Worked with schools to optimize their policies. Got 75% of the population to sign a pledge that got them optimizing their own homes, digging a garden out back, optimizing their kitchen by switching out their plates using smaller plates. We clustered people in groups of 5 and challenged them to walk together for 10 weeks, knowing that these were people who wanted to change their habits and I could foster friendships. And then we gave people an opportunity to take part in purpose workshops. We were there for about a year and a half. We raised life expectancy by about 3 years. We lowered people's weight, and we actually lowered the healthcare cost of that city workers by about 40%. USA Today covered it. Newsweek came out and did a story about a year later, and U.S. News and World Reports was there 2 years later and found that the programs we implemented worked. I don't have to tell this audience that there's a huge healthcare crisis in this country. If current trends keep up, 50% of Americans will be suffering from diabetes, and about 75% of us will be obese or overweight. We spend about $2.1 trillion a year on diseases we could largely avoid. And for the first time in living history, our children are expected to live shorter lives than we do, up to 5 years. Is that because we are stupid? or somehow lack the discipline of our grandparents? No. Our environment has changed. We are evolutionarily hardwired for hardship and scarcity, but yet we live in this environment of ease and abundance. You can't go to you can't buy gasoline, rent a DVD, or buy cough medicine without being routed through a gauntlet of candy bars, chips, and soda pop. There's a button to push for yard work, another button to push for garden work, another button to push for kitchen work. We actually burn about a fifth as many calories in non-exercise physical activity as our great-grandparents did. Raise your hand if you used to walk to school when you were a kid. Now raise your hand if your children walk to school. It's about 8 hands up. In 1970, 50% of American kids walked to school. Now we're down to about 10%. We just engineered 3 miles of weekly walking out of our kids' lives. The answer to making America a healthier place does not lie with our doctors, does not lie with Obamacare. Mitt Romney's not going to give us the answer. Big Pharma's not going to give us the answer. The answer, I assert, is taking a careful look at the cultures where people are actually living longer. Pay careful attention to that, and then organize the world that we live in accordingly. Thank you.